Hello, and welcome back. I'm Ginny Mahar from Hypothyroid Chef, and today we're going to make Turkey Albondigas Soup. This is a comforting, brothy, Mexican-inspired meatball soup. It's one of my family's all-time favorite recipes. This version does stray a little bit from some of the traditional ingredients in albondigas, but it is also gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free, and it can be made nightshade-free, which makes it perfect for elimination diets like Paleo and AIP. It's also full of thyroid-supportive nutrients and ingredients. It's warm, it's nourishing, it's flavorful. You're gonna love this one. So let's get cooking. So we're starting with the meatballs. These are really light, they're flavorful, they're flecked with fresh mint and cilantro, which is really what gives them that signature albondigas flavor. So for the meatballs, we're gonna start with 1.5 pounds of ground turkey. We're gonna add about 1/4 of a finely chopped white onion, 1 cup of cauliflower rice. This is you can buy this in the freezer section now. This is thawed. And we're also gonna add about 1/4 cup of fresh cilantro. And chop that up pretty fine. Next, we'll add about 1/4 cup of fresh mint. I've got tons of this growing in my garden right now, so no shortage of mint ever. And we'll give that a pretty fine chop as well. Now for our meatballs, we're gonna need a binder, and traditionally breadcrumbs are used to bind meatballs, like often a mixture of breadcrumb and egg. And of course, we're avoiding gluten. Now you could do gluten-free breadcrumbs or gluten-free bread, like toasted and ground up, but I really like to use cassava flour. I find that it makes a really great binder for things like meatloaf or meatballs and is gluten-free. It also doesn't really add a lot of texture or flavor, which is kind of what we want here. And then for seasoning, we're gonna do a teaspoon of fine sea salt. And we'll add some freshly ground pepper. Now, of course, if you're AIP, you just wanna omit the pepper. Okay, so once everything's in there, we can go ahead and mix our meatballs. I just like to use my clean hands to kind of blend all of this together. And then once it's all blended, we'll roll it into balls. It is a good idea when you're mixing things like meatballs or meatloaf to try not to overmix. It's sort of like bread dough. You just wanna get everything mixed and call it a day. Okay, another little trick with meatballs when you're rolling them is you can use just a little bit of water to keep the mixture from sticking to your hands. And that's really helpful when you're blending things like poultry that can tend to be a little bit stickier to work with than something like ground beef. So we're gonna go ahead and roll all of this into 1-inch balls. And as my hands kind of get sticky, I can just dip them in the water here and keep rolling. Now, turkey is actually a really great source of quite a few different key thyroid-supporting nutrients. It's pretty rich in, of course, protein, iron, selenium. Selenium is a major thyroid-supporting nutrient and can actually help lower our antibodies for those of us with Hashimoto's. It's also a pretty decent source of tyrosine, like a lot of animal proteins are, and tyrosine is used in the production of thyroid hormone, along with iodine, and turkey is actually a pretty decent source of iodine. Now, of course, with iodine, it's one of those nutrients that our thyroid absolutely requires, but it is a Goldilocks nutrient where our body wants just enough of it, not too much. If we do get too much iodine, it can end up flaring up autoimmune symptoms. So it's one of those things that we want to have on our radar and also just be aware of, but also use some extra caution. You know, with a lot of these nutrients, more isn't always better. All right, now that our meatballs are done, we can go ahead and get started on cooking our soup. So in a big soup pot, I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of olive oil. Get that heating up. And normally, for AIP, you could use a white sweet potato. and I forgot to get one from the store. So I'm going to use this Yukon Gold potato, but if you do want to do nightshade free, white sweet potatoes are a great option here because they're not quite as sweet as orange flesh sweet potatoes, and they're a little bit more starchy. So they make kind of a better substitute for white potato than the orange fleshed sweet potatoes do, which tend to be a little bit sweeter, a little bit more moist, kind of more fall apart. I find that the white varieties of sweet potatoes just have a little bit more structure. But we're just going to take this and chop it up into about 1-inch cubes. All right, so we can go ahead and add those right to our pot. Along with a couple ribs of celery. We've got a few cloves of garlic here. We're just going to throw everything in all at once. Got a quarter of a white onion, finely chopped, and some chopped carrots, about 2 peeled and chopped carrots. So we're just going to go ahead and saute this until the veggies kind of start to soften just a little bit. All right, so this has been sweating for about 10 minutes. Sweating just means getting the vegetables to where they're not mushy, but they're just like a little bit tender. A little bit of the moisture has cooked out of them just a bit. So next we're going to add 8 cups of bone broth to the pot. And this is some homemade poultry-based, like mostly chicken-based bone broth, but you can also use boxed bone broth. I really like the brand Kettle and Fire. I've learned the hard way recently that not all packaged bone broth is created equal, and bought some that basically is just so awful. I'm gonna have to probably discard it, but Kettle and Fire tends to be good. The brand Bonafide tends to be really good for bone broth as well. All right, I've got a couple of chopped up zucchini here we're gonna add to the soup. Now this is traditional, but you could also use some hearty greens. You could use cabbage. You know, with so many of my recipes, including this one, I include variations for different diets. I try to add a lot of flexibility based on like, what do you have in your fridge? So, you know, if you wanna include pepper and white potatoes, or if you want to use more traditional like white rice in the meatballs instead of cauliflower rice, you can do that. I include a lot of those notes in my recipes. So once we've stirred that in, we're gonna go ahead and season this just a little bit with a teaspoon of Mexican oregano. And regular oregano would work well here too. Mexican's just a little bit more ideal, and we'll give it a little bit of sea salt for seasoning. And I am using a little bit of pepper in this version. So we're gonna bring this to a simmer, and then we can go ahead and add our meatballs. All right, we've got our broth boiling, so we're gonna go ahead and just gently drop in our meatballs one by one and let those start cooking. These are gonna give the broth so much delicious, rich flavor, and the mint in there is just so special. I know if you haven't cooked with mint much, it might sound a little odd, but it really is kind of what makes this soup really special. I would say that and the broth. So if you can use bone broth, that is kind of ideal here to get that really nice, rich taste. All right, so now that we've got our meatballs in, we're gonna go ahead and cover that and just let it simmer for about 20 minutes. I'm not gonna do a whole lot of stirring just yet. I kinda wanna give the meatballs time to sort of set up so I don't squish them. But yep, we'll just let this simmer. I don't want it to boil too hard. Try to keep it at like a nice low rolling simmer for about 20 minutes, and then we'll be ready to taste it. All right, so our soup is ready. That's been simmering pretty low for about 20 minutes. It smells absolutely amazing. I did already give it a taste, added a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper. Always want to do that to finish your soups. And I've got this cooling so that I can give it a taste. This is so comforting. It's one of those soups, kind of like chicken noodle. It's just so wonderful and elegant in its simplicity, and that's what makes it so good. So you do really want to make sure that you've got enough seasoning in there. But it's just packed with zucchini, carrots, celery, lots of chunky vegetables. That broth is so, so flavorful. I can taste all the herbs in there, the oregano, the mint, the cilantro, the garlic. Let's give these meatballs a try. Yum. That cassava flour makes such a great binder. These meatballs are so tender. You'd never know what's in there, which we like. But this is just one of my absolute favorite soup recipes. I hope you love it. Give it a try. And if you love this recipe, you'll find 50 more like it in my thyroid-friendly everyday e-cookbook, which is full of thyroid-friendly recipes that, just like this, are easy, family-friendly, nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory, and just packed with good for you nutrients and nourishment. So you can click the link in the description to check out my e-cookbook. And I also have a really exciting announcement. I've got a print cookbook coming soon. It's going to be out in January of 2026. I can't tell you a whole lot more about it, but it's going to be packed with over 100 delicious, nutrient-dense, and anti-inflammatory thyroid-friendly recipes. So I'm so super duper excited to share that with you. You'll find the link to this Turkey Albondigas soup recipe in the video description. That's all ready to go for you. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm Ginny Mahar, your thyroid health and cooking coach, wishing you happy cooking, happy thriving, and the best of health. See you next time.